Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, the Illinois Senate Democrats acted yesterday. They sure did.
Oh, no.
On a party line vote, they voted to increase the Illinois state income tax by 32% with no spending reforms. John Cullerton, the Senate president, was backslapping his colleagues and patting himself on the back as well. We actually acted. Well, sure. And Willie Sutton used to act, too. He would go into a bank and demand the money at the point of a gun. That's acting. The question is it productive acting? And the other question, too, since all the press agents for big government, their focus in this state, in Chicago and Springfield, is on the crises in government, and they're real. And they've all been created at the hands of Chicago Democrats and complicit Republicans over the last 40 years. But there's another crisis happening, too, and that's in the private sector. That's for families whose home equity is being stolen, whose kids are leaving to go to college elsewhere, and have been for a long time. Oh, by the way, for job opportunities they don't have, particularly for those that are less advantaged that the Democrats like to feign interest in, that Karen Lewis was talking about the City Club yesterday. Unemployment rates on the west and south sides of Chicago approaching the Great Depression 90 years ago, 95 years ago. That's true. So what to do about it? Senate Democrats say continue taking more of your dollars, your money, 32% income tax hike, nothing with respect to spending reforms or changing the obligations that state government accrues and imposes. Now it heads over to the House. So what's going to happen there? Well, for perspective on that, we're pleased to be joined by a member of the Illinois House of Representatives. She is State Representative Jeanne Ives, Republican from Wheaton. Jeanne, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on, especially about this topic.
So what happens in the House with respect to the Senate bill that was passed yesterday to increase income tax?
Well, if you believe Mike Madigan, he's going to thoughtfully consider their proposal. But I actually pre-filed for this tax increase bill back in January, figuring that if I wanted a voice in the conversation on taxes, that it'd be helpful to control the bill in the House. So as of right now, I'm the sponsor when it comes over to the House. And I'd like to have my own conversation about taxes, and it's not about increasing them.
But just to clarify, for those not steeped in the legislative procedural protocols, you're the sponsor not because you support it. You're the sponsor because you want to bury it.
That's exactly right.
So,
Bury it, change it dramatically to a property tax cap, not just a freeze. All sorts of other fun stuff we could do with this bill instead.
well, if you could wave your magic wand, what would you want to have happen?
Well, I certainly want a balanced budget, but I don't want a tax increase. And I think we can do it. And I think that the problem here with the Senate Democrats is they think it's very easy just to reach into other people's pockets and pull out more money. They literally don't think every time when they're increasing taxes, where does that money come from? It comes from the business community, and it's very hostile to business here in Springfield, and we've got to change it. The reason you have the highest black unemployment is because you also don't have a lot of jobs, especially jobs for which that are middle class jobs that people can actually earn an honest living and work hard every day and come home and provide for the family. And those types of jobs are leaving Illinois. So what would I do? I'd make it a very business-friendly environment, and that doesn't mean that you put on the highest tax rate for corporations in the entire U.S., which is what they did with this bill.
Where you already have Illinois families paying the highest overall state and local tax burden in the country, and that's largely driven by property taxation.
Well, and that's lost on them. So property taxes affect businesses, they affect families, everybody, but that whole conversation is lost on those folks down there. They just think that certain people can afford more money, and that's the only way out of this mess. I completely disagree. I think we can right-size our spending. I think we can add a lot more accountability in. I mean, every single week there is a news article after news article about misspent funds in the state of Illinois. And that's where it needs to end.
And just for some context here to kind of reset, in case people have forgotten with all of the back and forth over the last several months, the Governor Ronner, has said property tax relief, a property tax freeze. I don't think it goes far enough, but it's a start. Property tax freeze is a must-have for a budget deal. But as he has said from the beginning of his term to the present, he's willing to compromise. He's willing to deal on revenue. He's willing to increase taxes, is the bottom line. But he's not willing to do it if you don't get any spending reforms on the other side. So in terms of who is intractable, as much as the Democrats want to play this game of Ronner is an iconoclast, and he is the one who is obstinate, and he's the one unwilling to apply the art of compromise, it's just false. And what they did yesterday is proof of that. What they really want is just to pour more money in to stave off the collapse of these government institutions and, admittedly, civic institutions just a little while longer to get through 2018. At least that's what the Senate wants to do. I have a feeling Mike Madigan's perspective is different. And just to put an exclamation point on this, at the same time this is going on, and they're not interested in spending reforms, you have legislation that's filed by rank-and-file Chicago Democrats like this, a proposal from State Representative Kelly Cassidy to publicly finance races for state office. Now she wants to spend more taxpayer money that they don't have to finance politicians' campaigns. And Will Guzzardi, the great progressive state representative, also from Chicago, has introduced tuition-free Illinois, a new college, new college affordability grant for Illinois students. That's just this week. I mean,
they have all sorts of ways. Yeah, they have so many ways that they want to spend your money, and people can't even keep track of it. And that's the problem here. It's never enough for them. That's why you have to demand the reforms, and Governor Ronner has to stand strong for these reforms. We have to do this for the taxpayers.
I know Republicans are in the minority both in the House and the Senate, but what can you do to fight back? And are all of you guys together? Is there, did you form a solidarity?
Oh, yeah. The Republicans are definitely together on no tax increase, especially without reform. I mean, look, we're going to spend $800 million next year more just for public pensions at the state level. You don't think we need to reform that? You're worried about disability, folks. You're worried about colleges. You're worried about universities staying open. Well, how about let's talk about pension reform? If we don't do pension reform, we're going nowhere in this state really fast. I mean, so people need to start howling about the right things, and it's really a reform budget. And so the tax increase is absolutely the wrong direction.
And if this tax increase dies in the House, or if it passes the House in another party line vote and it's vetoed by the governor because it doesn't include any spending reforms, that you already have the Democrats telegraphing what they're going to do when the system really starts to seize up at the beginning of the next fiscal year in July, and you've got more layoff notices at colleges, and you may even have a college that you've advocated should shut its doors anyway, or its doors should be shut, and I agree, Chicago State, but you're going to have stories like that, and you're going to have the press agents for big government in Springfield and Chicago doing the PR work for Democrats, telling the stories of how callous and indifferent to human suffering Ronner and the Republicans are, and how much they care about everyone, which is what Karen Lewis was doing at City Club. And so are Republicans ready to stand and deliver to make the arguments to connect the dots to give lie to that tried and true Democrat talking point?
Well, I'm certainly willing to stand, and I know a number of my other colleagues are willing to stand in the gap and stop this type of policy from going forward. If we don't get business friendly, if we don't get taxpayer friendly, it's going to get worse, not better. And I don't think it's that hard for people to understand. And, this spending goes down to your local levels, too. Everybody in government in the state of Illinois is overspending. I guarantee you. Your schools, you think they're spending appropriately? I guarantee you they're overspending. So it's everybody's conversation. It's not just at the state house level. Everybody needs to be in this conversation and understand what's going on. If we don't reform, Illinois dies. That's really the case. And we're going to, look, we can do this two ways. We can either solve this ourselves, or the market's going to come in and solve it for us.
Now,
When we're junk bond rated and all that, then we're going to pay higher rates. When people start to leave more, it's going to affect them. When businesses start to move their companies again over to Wisconsin and in Indiana, we're going to bleed out more people and taxpayers. So if we don't solve this ourselves, the market will.
And now we have the soda tax, too, that's coming up that, I mean, literally a 99-cent 2-liter bottle of soda is going to cost $1.81. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, I don't even know what they could tax next. Do you?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's lucky that Dan doesn't drink soda and he just likes his bourbon straight up.
That's right, exactly. But they already whacked the sin tax of cigars.
Oh, yeah.
Try buy a cigar in Cook County. Thankfully, I don't.
How many? Yeah, but how bad is that? The taxes on cigars.
Usurious.
Really?
Yes, in my opinion,
Okay.
of course. But I mean, it's just they're just unserious. A soda tax.
Totally.
That's the
sugary drink
That's
tax.
the salvation. Here, we're going to fund schools and we're going to fund social services by demanding that people drink and smoke and drink soda, sugary sodas, and run red lights and gamble, because that's the way we try, and we don't do a good job of funding government services in this state.
I thought the Illinois lottery was supposed to help fund education.
Well, I mean, this is the whole.
That's the whole.
It's just another. This money out when we put this money in.
Toll roads were temporary, by the way.
The whole. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, the whole thing is just government aligned against families, and it's amazing to me how many people suffer from the Stockholm Syndrome, including in the leafy suburbs in DuPage, Jeannie.
Well, yeah, and it's government aligned against small business. So even their service tax expansion really hit small businesses mostly, and it was for a nominal amount of money. I mean, initially it was like maybe $119 million the first year. That's nothing in a $32 billion budget, and you're going to hit the small business people that provide those services the most, and it's just not fair. So. I honestly think that this was not well thought out at all, obviously. And there was no emphasis on growth. We have to grow our economy. That's what we have to do.
What's interesting, too, I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine whose dad is a legislator in the state legislature in Minnesota.
Oh.
And like in Minnesota, as well as Indiana and Wisconsin, they're talking about what to do with budget surplus money. Like,
I'm sorry, what's that you speak of? Budget surplus?
So my friend's dad is a state legislator. He wants to return the money to families in Minnesota. The governor there, Democrat, Dayton, wants to, introduce a new pre-K education program. I mean, that's the conversation that other states around us are having. We're having the conversation of when can the federal government come in and seize Illinois and appoint an emergency manager.
Yeah, just like Puerto Rico. We're there. And we have $14 billion in back bills that we owe people that we contracted for, that we owe real money for services. And, I personally do believe it's immoral to hold that much debt on other people's backs.
Yeah.
And I think we need to solve that. But you can't solve any of this stuff on a tax increase without first demanding the reforms. Because it's only going to go to broken pension systems. It's going to go to broken grant systems, broken Medicaid systems that have no accountability. And until you do that, you can ensure that any dollar spent is going to the right place.
All right. She is State Representative Jeanne Ives, Republican from Wheaton. Jeanne, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with